She told me I was boring. There I sat, beer in hand, mulling over her words. They say people cry into their beers, but not me. I didn't see the point. Sure, it stung, but it wasn't the kind of pain that called for tears. Why mourn someone who decides to walk away? Besides, isn't the common belief that people are replaceable? Everywhere I go, I hear complaints. Women lament there aren't any good men left, claiming they're either taken or uninterested. On the other side, my guy friends gripe about how women fail to keep their promises, many of them burned by divorces. It's ironic, really. People seem blind to the blessings they already have, sharing years with someone, learning their quirks, and weaving lives together. It's a gift, yet so easily dismissed. Her accusation didn't sting because she wanted something or someone else. What hurt was being labeled boring. The funny thing, she hadn't even ended things. She simply declared she was going to date others because I wasn't exciting enough. When I was younger, I lived for adventure. Kayaking around coastal islands, navigating whitewater streams, and defying warnings to paddle solo to Long Island were just a few of the thrills I chased. I'd camp on the beach under the stars, then paddle back the next day, feeling alive. But to Whitney, these weren't the actions of a husband or father. She called them reckless, arguing I had responsibilities to my family. So I changed. I gave up the adrenaline-fueled pursuits I loved: backcountry skiing, motorcycle rides, my cherished Triumph Spitfire, scuba diving, mountain biking, and rock climbing, all shelved in favor of a safer lifestyle. I embraced the role of the good dad, opting for groomed ski slopes over powder-filled trails and trading my rugged vehicles for a minivan. Yes, a minivan. Not just any minivan, but one with faux wood grain siding. All for her because I loved her. Once my hobbies were retired, her focus shifted to my job. My work required frequent travel, sometimes international trips that lasted weeks. These trips brought in substantial bonuses and advanced my career, but she resented them. Even after I made partner and reduced the frequency of these trips, it wasn't enough. Still, I played the corporate game strategically, balancing home life and career advancement. I streamlined negotiations with teleconferencing and chartered flights to save time, chipping away at my bonuses for the greater good. Eventually, I climbed the ladder, reduced travel, and spent more time at home. Life became stable, predictable. But, if I'm honest, I was bored. Then she called me boring. After everything I sacrificed to fit her ideal, that was her takeaway. If she wanted to chase excitement, I wasn't going to stop her. But I wouldn't be her safety net, waiting around for her dates to fall apart. No, if forsaking all others no longer mattered, then neither did the vows we built our lives on. That evening, I came home and changed into jeans and a sports shirt. In the back of my closet, I found my old boots, the ones she used to love, whether they were for riding, hiking, or just everyday wear. They'd been forgotten along with the man I used to be, but not anymore. They still fit, and honestly, they looked better now. After years of filling out with muscle, they suited me even more. I grabbed a sport coat, added a splash of aftershave, and made it clear I wasn't waiting up for her tonight. She noticed. "What's going on?" she asked, fresh out of the shower, her hair still damp. "Nothing," I replied casually. Looking like that, I didn't answer. I simply stepped out the door. The minivan sputtered to life as I pulled out of the driveway. But it wasn't long before I saw her rushing out, calling after me in her robe. Her call came through moments later. I let it go to voicemail, where my newly updated message waited. "Hi, this is Mason. I can't come to the phone right now because I'm probably driving or, being boring. For something more exciting, you can reach Whitney at 564, 2245. Otherwise, leave a message and I might get back to you. Maybe Monday. Ciao. First stop, goodbye, minivan." I was done with faux wood siding and everything it symbolized. I needed something rugged, with character. A vehicle that matched the life I was reclaiming. Even an old Willie's wagon with a surfboard strapped to the top would do. Anything but the symbol of the dull, confined life I'd been living. The boring version of me would have quietly taken the checkbook, settled things, and gone back home. But that wasn't happening this time. Not now. Instead, I went all in. I bought not one, but two cars. One for elegance, the other for adventure. The Mercedes dealership was thrilled to sell me a convertible that practically screamed sophistication. It was the kind of car that made a statement, one I hadn't made in years. My friends would definitely take notice. And yeah, throwing in a phrase like très élégant even without perfect pronunciation just added to the fun. Who cared about the details? I wasn't boring anymore, and checking every accent mark would have felt, well, boring. But the highlight of the day? A monster Jeep they had sitting in their used inventory. Lifted, oversized tires, stadium-bright fog lights, and a train horn loud enough to wake half the city. It was absolutely over the top, and I loved it. The Jeep came home with me right away, while the convertible was scheduled to be delivered and parked safely in the driveway. Sunday morning rolled around, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Whitney had called me boring. Sure, maybe the man I'd let myself become for her was dull, predictable even. But that man was gone now. I hooked up my new trailer and hit the road, leaving the house we'd shared behind. My destination? My mom's place. It had been months since I'd visited, and the 3-hour drive gave me time to relish the power of driving something real again. When I arrived, Mom was overjoyed, especially when I told her I'd be staying for dinner. She had my favorite lasagna already in the oven. She didn't pry about why I was there or why I'd come alone. She didn't need to. She could always read me like an open book. The next morning, I wandered out to her shed and uncovered a piece of my past, the Triumph Spitfire I'd left behind years ago. My brother had kept it running by taking it out occasionally. The dirt bike, on the other hand, wasn't in great shape, but that didn't matter. I just needed it for the memories. By midday, both the car and bike were loaded onto the trailer, and Mom's smile was wide as ever. "So, are you going to tell me what's going on?" she asked. I grinned. "What do you mean?" She gave me that knowing look only a mother can. About 25 years of living your life Whitney's way? Raising 3 kids while burying the adventurous man I once knew under minivans and safe ski slopes. And now here you are. No wife in sight, driving a roaring truck, hauling your old toys, and looking sharp in those boots. She wasn't wrong. So I told her everything. About Whitney's comment, her need for excitement, and my decision to step away. "Maybe she's lost her mind," Mom said thoughtfully. "But honestly, you should thank her. She's given you back your freedom." Mom had a way of being right about these things. Later that evening, I finally turned my phone back on. Unsurprisingly, Whitney and the kids had been trying to reach me all day. I decided to address the kids in a group text, me. "I'm fine, I'm at Grandma's. Your mom and I aren't seeing eye to eye on something, so I needed time to think." Ben: "Dad, Mom is freaking out. She says you disappeared and doesn't know why." Me: "I'm not going to lie to you, but I'm also not explaining it here. All I'll say is your mom called me boring, and I'm doing something about it. Maybe ask her about what she's been up to." Chloe: "Dad, that doesn't sound like Mom. She's always cautious. Are you sure there isn't a way to fix this?" Me: "I appreciate your faith in me, sweetheart. But before you decide I'm wrong, talk to your mom and find out the whole story." Adam: "Dad, we're not blaming you. We just want things to work out for the best." Me: "Thanks, son. Let me know after you've talked to her." That night, Mom and I watched an old movie, laughing at how cheesy it was. Just as I was heading to bed, my phone pinged again. Chloe: "Dad, I'm sorry. I can't believe Mom went out with another guy." Me: "I know, sweetie." Chloe: "What are you going to do?" Me: "I'm going to live my life. I won't live by her rules anymore. If those rules had mattered, she would have stuck to the ones we agreed on when we got married, but since she didn't, I'm free to move on." Adam: "Got it, Dad. Give Grandma a kiss for me. When I visit next weekend, I want to ride in the Spitfire." Me: "Deal. You guys are just like Grandma. You know me too well." Ben: "And don't forget, spring break means backcountry skiing, no groomed slopes." Me: "You got it. Time to start training. Those trails don't ski themselves." Yeah, my kids understood. They'd seen photos of me covered in mud from motocross or carving through fresh powder. They knew this wasn't a midlife crisis. It was a comeback. Sunday morning, Mom and I grabbed bagels and spent the rest of the day tackling chores. Around lunchtime, Whitney's name popped up on my screen. She wasn't happy. Apparently, the dealership had delivered the Mercedes, but the keys were locked inside. With the spare key in my pocket, all she could do was stare at the car, stuck in her garage. I made a mental note to send the delivery team a generous tip. By the time I got back to the house, Whitney's car was still parked in the driveway. I maneuvered the Jeep in, parked it, and climbed into my new Mercedes. As I pulled out again, I caught a glimpse of Whitney rushing out, waving me down. I just smirked and kept going. Now she had a perfect view of the Jeep and its trailer, loaded with her two least favorite relics of mine, the Triumph Spitfire and my Kawasaki dirt bike. If nothing else, it would give her something to think about. Her side of the garage was clear, so she could leave if she wanted. But that wouldn't happen. Leaving would be too easy for her. Boring, she said. I didn't stick around. Instead, I swung by the mall, grabbed enough clothes for a few days, and checked into the Hyatt near my office. I booked the penthouse suite. Years of bonuses were finally paying off. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept like a rock. The next morning, I arrived at work energized and ready to shake things up. My team had been struggling to close a deal in Hong Kong for 160 acres of prime industrial property, and it was time for me to step in. I gathered them in the conference room and delivered the plan. This deal's been stalled too long, I said. We're going to Hong Kong and we're getting it done. But that's not all. We've got 3 other acquisition targets lined up, and I want us ready to buy. Let the legal team know we're coming in hot. They need to have everything ready to move fast. Pack for at least a month. If you can't stay that long, tag team with Ian's group. The team exchanged glances. A month. Seriously? One of them asked. Yes, and bring your families if you want. I'll cover airfare, hotels, and expenses. Sightseeing is on me. I want everyone happy and focused. No distractions at home. Alex Foster, my go-to negotiator, grinned. Sounds good to me. We'll also scout out opportunities in Sydney and Buenos Aires before heading back, I added. Ian's team will hit Seoul and Mumbai while we're in Hong Kong. This is a rare chance to make some serious moves. As the team buzzed with excitement, I turned to Erica, our resident financial wizard. Erica, can I have a word? I said, gesturing toward my office. And tell my assistant to hold all calls, especially from my wife. She followed me in, giving me a curious look as I shut the door. This is your big opportunity, I told her. We're working fast and there's no room for error. Some of these acquisitions are stepping stones. Pieces we'll sell off later to get what we really want. Others are long-term investments that'll impress the partners. Your job is to stay sharp, anticipate every move, and back me up 100%. You're on call 24/7. Got it? She raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk creeping onto her face. 24/7, huh? Does that include... She leaned in slightly. Sleeping my way to a partnership? I chuckled, shaking my head. No. One betrayal at a time is enough for me. You'll have to work your way up the old-fashioned way. She laughed softly, giving me a knowing look. You know you're tempted, though. She wasn't wrong. Erica was stunning, sharp, confident, with a presence that demanded attention. But I wasn't about to mix business with personal matters. Not now. Tempted or not, I said firmly, it's not happening. What is happening is you being my right hand on this trip. So stay focused. She nodded, her grin widening. Anything else, boss? Yeah, I said, leaning back in my chair. When you pick me up Friday morning, make sure you look incredible. I want Whitney wondering what's going on. And when you book the limo, ask for Liz as the driver. Tell her to wear the uniform with the short shorts. Trust me, I want Whitney's imagination working overtime. Erica laughed. You really think that'll get to her? Oh, it will, I said confidently. She started this game, and I'm making sure she knows how it feels. The team was motivated. Erica was ready to prove herself. And Whitney, well, she was stewing. My plan was working. Later that afternoon, I considered renting a plane for a tandem skydive. It wasn't about taking risks. It was about reclaiming the thrill. I rented the cameras, recorded every moment, and posted the footage online. The reaction was immediate. Old friends and colleagues reached out, amazed to see the return of the man I used to be. By the next morning, my phone was lighting up with messages. Whitney's name popped up repeatedly, but it was the kids' messages that I opened first. Ben, Dad, Mom is freaking out. What's going on? Me, living my life, son. Maybe ask your mom why I'm doing it. Chloe, I can't believe you're skydiving. Are you okay? And why is Mom so mad? Me, I'm fine, sweetheart. Let's just say your mom called me boring and I'm proving her wrong. Adam, Love the jump, Dad, but don't break anything before our ski trip. Me. Don't worry, kiddo. I'll be ready to take on those slopes, and so will you. Whitney's calls and messages went unanswered. She had started this, and now, for the first time in years, I was playing by my rules. Boring, she said. Not anymore. I wasn't ready to face Whitney just yet, so I waited until she was at work to slip home. I packed what I needed, then headed straight to the airport for a late-night flight to Chicago. There was no pressing reason for the trip, but I had some business prospects that could prove useful. The next couple of days turned out to be surprisingly productive and gave me the time and distance I needed to keep Whitney at arm's length until the big trip. By the time I returned home late Thursday night, the house was dark and quiet. Whitney didn't come home until 2 a.m. Thankfully, she was alone. If she had brought one of her so-called options into our home, it would have been a different story. But for now, I didn't have to deal with her directly. The next morning, I was up early, energized and ready to go. My bags were packed and waiting by the door. I made myself a hearty breakfast, steak and eggs, while ZZ Top blared on the kitchen stereo. I dressed in a pair of perfectly tailored gabardine slacks and a sharp sports shirt Whitney had never seen before. The outfit was comfortable yet polished, ideal for the long trek to Asia, and honestly, I looked damn good. The smell of fresh coffee eventually lured Whitney downstairs. She always preferred mine over hers. The moment she saw me, her eyes widened in surprise. "Oh my God, Mason, you're home! Why didn't you answer my calls? I've been worried sick." I barely looked up. "Yeah, the kids mentioned you were worried." "I'm fine, just doing what I want." Her arms crossed, and I could see her usual frown starting to form. "Oh, no, you don't. I deserve a better explanation than that." I met her gaze evenly. "It's simple. Last week you told me you were going to do whatever you pleased, and I couldn't stop you. So I figured I'd do the same. If that's the new dynamic, I can live with it." Her jaw dropped. "That's not what I meant. I said I was going to explore dating other men." I shrugged, and I said I didn't agree with that. "But clearly my opinion doesn't matter to you. So why should yours matter to me?" Her voice grew sharper. "Because you have a family to think about, Mason. A husband and father has no business running around on motorcycles or playing with little sports cars. We settled that years ago." I let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, we did. Back when I thought you cared. I gave up a lot for you and the kids. I drove that minivan, skied on tame slopes, and stopped chasing thrills. I hadn't jumped out of a plane in years until this week. You called me boring because I was bored. But things are different now. The kids are grown, their college funds are set, and their trust funds are waiting. They'll be fine no matter what. And if I die doing what I love, I'll go out smiling. They'll understand." Her expression shifted to disbelief. "What about me, Mason? What happens to me?" I met her gaze, steady and calm. "You? I'm not sure you're part of the equation anymore." She blinked, stunned. "What? That's a huge leap. We haven't even figured things out, and you're already saying—" "I'm not saying anything, Whitney. I'm just acknowledging the reality. If I truly mattered to you, you wouldn't have thrown that ultimatum at me. You wanted excitement? Fine. Go find it. But I'm done living by rules you don't even follow." Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Perfect timing. I opened it to find Liz and Erica standing there, both radiating confidence. Liz gave me a quick hug and went straight for my luggage, while Erica handed me the trip dossier and began rattling off details about the deals lined up. Whitney's glare bore into my back, but I didn't care. Erica continued, unfazed by Whitney's presence. "The Hong Kong deal is looking strong. We've got 3 additional acquisitions ready to review when we land. The team's fully prepped." "Good," I said, nodding. "Let's hit the ground running." Whitney finally interrupted, her voice sharp with confusion. "Hong Kong? Sydney? Buenos Aires? How long are you going to be gone?" I glanced at her casually. "A couple of months, maybe. Plenty of time for you to explore whatever it is you're missing. Just do me one favor, don't bring anyone into the house while I'm away." Her face flushed with anger as she shifted from furious to desperate. "Mason, wait. We need to talk about this. About us. Where this is going." I raised a hand, cutting her off. "Wrong tense, Whitney. This isn't going anywhere. It's already over. And right now, so am I." Liz loaded the last suitcase into the limo, and Erica remained focused, chatting about the trip. As I walked toward the car, I caught a glimpse of Whitney's face when she noticed the Jeep, Spitfire, and convertible blocking her car in the garage. Her mouth opened in what I assumed was a string of colorful words. I didn't stick around to hear them. Hong Kong was a whirlwind of activity. Erica stayed in the suite next to mine, professional and efficient at every turn. She handled the numbers with precision, and together we closed every deal we aimed for. By the time we moved on to Sydney, we had set up additional opportunities for our team to pursue. In Buenos Aires, we cemented our reputation as serious players in international acquisitions. For the first time in years, I was back in my element. I wasn't living by anyone else's expectations. I was living my life. Through everything, I stayed true to my vows. Hard to believe, maybe, but a part of me still cared about Whitney. As twisted as it sounds, deep down, I wanted to believe she'd realize her mistake and try to make things right. But I wasn't holding my breath. In Sydney, I reconnected with Hazel Clark, an old friend who worked as a professional buyer for wealthy travelers. She spent the day showing my team around, helping us negotiate deals with local businesses. That evening, we had dinner together, sent the team back to their hotel, and then she invited me back to her place. Hazel was exactly what I needed at that moment: elegant, confident, and completely unapologetic. For the first time in ages, I felt alive, desired. The man I'd been rediscovering wasn't boring, and he certainly didn't feel boring. Guilt crept in afterward, but it didn't stay long. Whitney had rewritten the rules, and I was simply following the new playbook. After Sydney, we moved on to Buenos Aires, where I met a captivating woman who introduced me to the tango in more ways than one. She was more than a business connection. She reminded me that life didn't have to be dull. I didn't have to be dull. When the work in Buenos Aires wrapped up, I sent my team back home in first-class style. I always took care of my people. As for me, I chartered a private jet and gave myself a couple of extra days for some final adventures. The flight back was anything but boring. The stewardess introduced me to the Mile High Club, and her colleague decided to join in. It made the long trip fly by. Pun intended. Boring? Not anymore. Before returning to face reality, I made a stop in Canada to meet up with the kids. It was early December, and they'd finished their finals ahead of the holiday break. Whitney wasn't expecting them for another week, but I thought we deserved some time together. We hit the slopes, powder-filled runs that could only be reached by helicopter. At night, we partied with the locals and reconnected in a way we hadn't in years. The kids were having the time of their lives, and I wasn't spending my nights alone either. One evening, I met a recently divorced blonde who was unsure of her next steps in life. By the third night, I'd hired her as my personal assistant, just after she wowed me with her fluency in 6 languages. She'd be a valuable asset to the company. And since she worked for me now, our dynamic shifted back to strictly professional. I have my principles. When the weekend ended, I dropped the kids off at Whitney's house and checked into a hotel near the office. I wasn't ready to deal with her yet. Instead, I bought myself a sleek condo as an early Christmas gift. I wasn't planning to spend the best years of my life alone. On Christmas morning, I showed up at Whitney's with the kids. She acted as if nothing had happened, like the past few months had been a bad dream. We went through the usual holiday motions, exchanging gifts, enjoying a big meal, and tidying up afterward. Before I left, I parked the Spitfire back in its garage spot, pulled the Jeep into the driveway, and drove off in the Mercedes. As I glanced back, I caught a glimpse of Whitney, realizing her car was blocked in again, this time by the convertible and the Spitfire. Her expression said it all, though I didn't need to hear the words. I had a good idea of what she was saying. That night, I slept soundly in my new condo, far removed from the chaos of her world. Boring, she said. Well, Whitney, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. The day after Christmas, I kept things low-key. I took each car to be washed and polished one by one. They'd spent enough time exposed to the elements, serving as visual reminders of how much had changed between Whitney and me. Now I wanted to take care of them, not for her, but for me. Once they gleamed again, I parked the Spitfire in its garage space and kept the Jeep and Mercedes at my condo. But things shifted on the second day after Christmas. Whitney was back to her usual games. Her smug grin returned as she welcomed her new boyfriend for lunch. She shot me a victorious look, clearly convinced she'd won some unspoken battle. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead, I went upstairs, packed a few things, and left without a word. The kids, however, weren't so passive. They saw through her act, and their anger took her by surprise. I guess she thought she still controlled the narrative, that I'd quietly endure as I had in the past. She was wrong. They packed their things, said their goodbyes, and joined me in the Jeep. We left Whitney behind and headed downtown to ring in the new year, just the three of us. The city offered plenty to do, museums during the day, vibrant nightlife after dark. The kids had friends in town, and we struck a perfect balance of family time and solo adventures. As for me, I made sure my alone time wasn't actually spent alone. By the time I returned to work after New Year's, I felt like a new man. The rhythm of my life had shifted entirely, and I was embracing it fully. Routine? Not anymore. Meanwhile, my professional success hadn't gone unnoticed. Word of my aggressive moves in Asia and South America spread quickly, and offers began rolling in from other companies. They wanted to bring me on board and capitalize on the momentum I'd built. I didn't keep any of this from my team. I made it clear, if I moved, they were coming with me. We'd built something extraordinary, and I wasn't about to let anyone else reap the rewards of our hard work. Word traveled fast, and soon enough, I was called into the boss's office. Now, a little background. Whitney's grandfather had built the company from the ground up, and her father, Mr. Franklin, had expanded it into the multifaceted business it was today. I entered the picture after marrying Whitney, starting as just another low-level analyst. Despite working my way up over the years, I was always seen as Whitney's husband. And since I'd signed a prenuptial agreement that prevented me from ever laying claim to her inheritance, including her substantial stake in the company, I was effectively locked out of any real power. Still, I excelled. Over the last 5 years, I had brought in more business than anyone else. But no matter how high my bonuses climbed or how many deals I closed, senior management refused to see me as anything more than a junior partner. When Mr. Franklin summoned me to his office, I wasn't surprised. His tone was brisk and to the point. "You've been making quite a few waves lately," he began, his voice cold and businesslike. "You've done well for the company, but I'm hearing that things are strained with my daughter. Should I be concerned?" I leaned back in my chair, refusing to let him dominate the conversation. He sat in his oversized leather chair, while I was perched on one of those intentionally uncomfortable visitor seats. But I wasn't playing that game. "Yes, sir, you should be," I replied evenly, his brow furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that I've been with this company for 25 years. I've outperformed every division head, spearheaded our expansion in Asia, and brought in more revenue than anyone else. And yet, I'm still a junior partner, so yes, you should be concerned, because I'm seriously considering taking my severance package and leaving." For a moment, he looked genuinely taken aback. "Mason, you know I can't promote you like I would anyone else. You're my son-in-law. It would look unfair." I cut him off with a short laugh. "I get it. Business is business, right? But that knife cuts both ways. If you're not going to reward me for what I've earned, I have options. Riverbank Enterprises and Hamilton Manufacturing have both made offers. They're ready to make me a full partner tomorrow." His expression hardened. "I expect loyalty from my son-in-law." "Loyalty?" I raised an eyebrow. Funny how that word only seems to matter when it benefits you. For years, I've been loyal, bringing in deals, making this company millions, while you've held me back because of optics. And let's not even start on how well you instilled that value in your daughter. Judging by her actions, loyalty doesn't seem to be a family trait." His face turned red with anger, but I wasn't done. "And one more thing. Why are you always Mr. Franklin while I'm just Mason? Respect goes both ways." His scowl deepened. "Fine, Mr. Nelson." I smiled. "Actually, it's Dr. Nelson. I earned my PhD in economics last May. You were at the ceremony, remember?" He gritted his teeth. "Very well, Dr. Nelson. For what it's worth, I'm aware of my daughter's behavior. We've had words, and let's just say she's not on speaking terms with me right now." I shook my head. "Then maybe you should rethink how you handle loyalty. If you keep pushing away people who bring you value, you'll end up with nothing." By the end of the conversation, he wasn't happy with my ultimatum, but he didn't have much of a choice. Within hours, every member of my team and Ian's had submitted their resignations. You've never seen anyone backpedal so fast. The next day, I was promoted to senior partner with a hefty raise. My team also received raises, and the company created a new mergers and acquisitions division just for us. My financial future was secure, but my personal life, that was just getting started. With work handled, I threw myself back into the things I loved. I returned to the motocross tracks, tearing up trails and catching air. The mud-caked exhilaration reminded me of the man I used to be. And judging by the looks I got from a few biker women, they appreciated it too. One Harley rider smirked after I landed a particularly big jump. "Not bad for an old guy," she teased. "Let me know when you're ready to upgrade that bike." I grinned. "I think I'm doing just fine with what I've got." We spent the evening talking about bikes, and not only. I hit the ski slopes harder than ever, tackling backcountry runs only helicopters could reach. Tuckerman's Ravine was just the beginning. By summer, I found myself in the Pyrenees, carving through snow-capped peaks by day and meeting sunbathers by night. By the end of one particularly memorable evening, the women I'd met on the slopes were with me in my suite, where snow was the last thing on anyone's mind. Skydiving? Absolutely. I dove back in, earning my solo certification after enough tandem jumps. In the same month, I soloed a sailplane. My instructor, thrilled with my progress, celebrated by suggesting a naked jump. Naturally, we followed it up with some quiet time on the beach where we landed. All of this made its way to Facebook. The posts were flooded with comments from friends and family cheering me on. My kids loved seeing the transformation, fully backing my return to the adventurous life. Whitney? Well, let's just say she wasn't as enthusiastic. Every time I posted something online, my phone would start buzzing. Whitney's name was always lighting up the screen. I didn't block her, I just chose not to answer. She even tried cornering me at work, using her father to drag me into meetings. But after the Woodford incident, he knew better than to try that again. I'd made myself clear. If he meddled in my business one more time, I'd walk for good. That warning stuck, and Whitney's attempts to use him as a lever finally stopped. But that didn't mean she gave up. Instead, she launched a full-blown campaign. Relatives, old friends, even people I hadn't heard from in years suddenly started calling. Their message was always the same. "Everyone makes mistakes, Mason. You should forgive her." It got old fast. So I decided to shut it down. To the men, I'd say, if it's such a small mistake, why don't you offer up your wives or girlfriends to me? Let me make a few of my own and see how forgiving you feel. To the women, I didn't hold back. Go ahead, lie down, and let me have my way. No big deal, right? Just a simple mistake after all. The shock on their faces didn't faze me. I wasn't interested in playing by their rules anymore. The pressure was mounting, though, and I needed an escape. So I hit the road again with my team. This time, we expanded into Brazil and Argentina before looping back to Hong Kong. The results were explosive. We performed so well that we ended up opening our first international office in Asia. Whitney's father? He couldn't say a word against it. The money we were bringing in was staggering, and for all his posturing, there was little he could do about my success. As for Whitney, she tried to keep up her act, but the kids finally talked some sense into her. They made her face the reality she had been avoiding for too long. I didn't want her in my life anymore. Not even on the edges. With that chapter closed, I started making changes. The Spitfire and the dirt bike, I sent them back to my mom's house. The Jeep, it went to my son. The Mercedes, my daughter's now. And Whitney, she got exactly what she'd earned, a divorce. Hazel, though, she got something far more meaningful, an engagement ring. I wasn't about to spend the rest of my life alone, and Hazel was everything Whitney never was. She loved the life I was building and threw herself into it with both feet. Whether it was skydiving, skiing, or traveling the world, Hazel matched my energy every step of the way. Life with her was never dull, not for a second. Every night with her felt like the ultimate adrenaline rush, better than any thrill I'd ever chased. That kind of fire? I never had it with Whitney, not even in the best of times. Whitney and I haven't spoken since the day I left. Her father had to physically stop her from making a scene. I know she still wants to talk, but she also knows how little interest I have in hearing from her again. Someday, though, our paths will cross again. A wedding, a grandchild. Some event will force us into the same room. I'll have to face her, whether I like it or not. But I'm not worried. When that day comes, Hazel will be by my side. Not to shield me, but to ensure I never slip back into the boring, lifeless man I used to be. Whitney can have her regrets. I've got Hazel, and a life worth living.